So Angie, once again, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for the
Um,
invitation. Happy to be here.
Glad to hear that. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to begin speaking about was the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. He has this Stoic quote where he says, "Don't be overheard complaining, not even to yourself." And I like that quote and I see the wisdom in it. But at the same time, I feel like complaining, dare I say, can be a remedy. Sometimes you really do need to talk about your problems and maybe you don't have a positive perspective on them, but just talking about them can really heal you. How do you balance those two perspectives? Don't be overheard complaining, not even to yourself, but at the same time, sometimes that can be a remedy. What do you think?
Mm. I think it is important to pay attention to what are some of those thoughts are you having, like the complaints, quote unquote. I don't like the word complaints because it sounds like you're nagging. But that's just my perspective. I feel like complaining is more like there is something underneath that complaining that's making you say those things to yourself. So I feel like in a way, it's like, let's go deeper than that. Obviously, my job as a therapist, as a licensed therapist, that's what I do every single day. Let's go deeper than that, right? Especially if you grew up in an environment where people have, told you that you're nagging too much or that you're nagging or you're too much. And you might feel that way. But I think it can get to a point that you might feel like you're nagging. I'm not gonna say you're nagging yourself, but like you could just dismiss how you're feeling because you learn that from the beginning that's nagging or complaining. So I think you might, my opinion is just to really tune in and kind of lean in more towards like, what does that mean for me? What is that? What is the message that it's bringing? What is the information? And sometimes I describe this to my clients in therapy, our emotions. Sometimes, obviously we don't want to make decisions out of just emotions, but we want to identify the emotion. Okay, I'm feeling frustrated. Well, why am I feeling frustrated? What's happening? What is that frustration telling me? What message that frustration is bringing onto me? And then I'll make a determination based on that data, and then I'll make a decision based on that. So not necessarily making the decision out of the emotion, but more like learning more about yourself and learning more about the feeling and what message the feeling is bringing in order to make a decision. So I don't know if that kind of answers some of your questions. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, let me ask you, because I do believe talking can be a cure, but do you think complaining can be a cure or no?
Well, complaining, I'm taking complaining more as I'm just letting you know how I feel about something. Um, so that right there is just information, which is different than talking. I don't know if that makes sense to
Yeah,
you.
it's
I
like
mean,
venting, right?
right, right. Venting is like, oh, I'm telling you about my day and this is what I did today and things where, it's kind of keeping each other updated. But I think complaining is has more like a deeper meaning that this is bothering me.
Hmm.
Whether it's bothering me about whether it could be related to a trigger, something from the past, kind of what I would call emotional wounds. They're still there, they're still painful. So it's like, okay, what's underneath that? There is this exercise which is called the anger iceberg, which is basically the iceberg, right? You see the iceberg and then you see the oceans and then we see like a little ship here. And then underneath the iceberg, there's so many emotions. Like people can only see the tip of the iceberg, which is the anger, the behavior. But underneath the anger, there's different emotions or sadness, frustration, disappointment, hungry. For sometimes we're just angry because we're hungry. We need to eat, or lack of sleep, or there's just so many emotions underneath. And sometimes we might just get, sometimes we all, the majority of the time, if we're seeing something, seeing someone that's angry, we only see the anger, but then we don't see what's underneath the anger. What's causing the person to behave in that way?
Yeah.
Are they feeling frustrated about something? Are they complaining about something? And then therefore the way they express the emotion is out of anger. And men tend to express their emotions, not always, but whether it's shutting down or just being angry. Like the majority of male in therapies that I work with, they're like, my wife sent me here because she said I have anger issues. And a lot of the times they just feel, frustrated. They might feel disappointed. They might feel stressed. The stress is a big one, but they just don't know how to process those feelings. They don't know how to talk about those feelings. So then the only emotion that they are able to show is anger. And of course, you're going to have a wife like, why are you angry all the time? But then it's like they don't know how to express. They don't have the emotional vocabulary to say, "Oh, I'm feeling stressed, and that's why I had a hard day at work today," or I'm feeling disappointed because I didn't get the promotion that I thought I was gonna get. Which that can turn into a conversation if I know how I feel and if I know how to express it. But if I keep it all in, I'm just angry and people are only gonna see anger. My wife sees anger, my kids sees anger, then I don't know how to call it because I don't know how I feel, then let alone I'm gonna explain this to them. Or even to the wife, right? I mean, I think that's that should be like your number one person. And that's something that I see also whether individual therapy or couples therapy too, where it's like he's always angry. Like I don't know what's wrong with him. And then we dive in deeper than that, and then next thing you know, it is all the other stuff that are happening, other stressors actually, but it's just that you just don't know how to communicate that.
Yeah. I loved how you said anger and then also shutting down for men when it comes to expressing emotions. Something I realized was um, if I don't express my anger, I can shut down, but shut down is like stonewalling. Why do you think people stonewall?
Well, there's different reasons. I think, shutting down or stonewalling. Sometimes it's just, I just feel so overwhelmed, and that I just freeze, and I just don't know how to respond to this.
Is that the
Uh,
same thing as stonewalling?
yes, I think so.
Hmm.
What's your definition of stonewalling?
Just kind of being quiet, uh, avoidant, not
Mhm.
saying anything, not pointing your anger. Just kind of walling it off, closing it away. It makes me think of this set of lyrics from a song by Zayn where he says, um, "I won't cover my scars, I'll let them bleed, so my silence won't be mistaken for peace." It's kind of like making a show of your anger, but not channeling it, just showing it.
Mm. I like that actually. But yes, it is the same thing. Shutting down, stonewalling. Because at the end of the day, you're just keeping it all in, which I can see that it's out of protection. I can see it, and I've heard this also. Um, it's like I need like my shutting down is just kind of like a way of just not dealing with the conflict, avoiding, because then things could escalate. And to a certain extent, I can see the goodness. Because if you have a wife that is, tend to express their emotions, which, then the other partner, meets her there, then we're gonna have a terrible, we're gonna have a war at home. I mean, so I can see the good. I can see where you wanna kind of have like the balance. But what happened is that when the shutting down or the stonewalling, they don't know how to communicate their feelings. They don't know how to express their needs. They don't know how to express their wants. Even after, let's say, a conflict, ideally, yes, you do have the conflict. You take a time out, kind of break from each other because there's, physiological stuff happening in our body, in our brain when we're angry. So we usually, recommend in couples therapy, you take a time out just to do some grounding exercises, just to kind of calm down your nervous system. And then ideally within 48 hours, based on Dr. Gottman research, which he's amazing. Everything about Dr. Gottman, I highly recommend for couples therapy. He recommends you want to come back to each other within 48 hours just to make sure that we address what happened, just to give each other an opportunity to talk about what happened from your perspective, what happened from my perspective, where did it go wrong, and really address what happened. And then he says, if it goes beyond 48 hours, then those emotional wounds can turn into resentments over time.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of the time, I mean, a lot of people then just, and that could be like cultural too, where we have an issue, we have a conflict, and we just don't talk about it, and then we act the next day like nothing happened, where you just hurt me with the words you said yesterday, and now I'm just like, hi, good morning, like nothing happened, like, and we don't give that space to each other to really process, and sometimes to even address and then forgive, to repair with one another, because repairing is like we're coming back to each other. Sometimes couples are just, any individuals might just kind of, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. And then we end the friendships and then we're done. And that sometimes are just kind of what I said, like lack of conflict resolution skills,
I have
which
that written down from you. I love that.
sometimes that is, and I know that's hard. Obviously, you can try to, come back to the person, try to like repair some things, but the other person needs to have the willingness to address that and to repair the relationship in the context of friendship or even just like in relationships with the sibling, with you and with the parent. It takes two, absolutely. So that's
Yeah.
another piece when you don't have control over somebody else decisions, but only yourself. You can do your part, but if the other person is not invested as much as you are, then you might have to just move on, unfortunately.
Yeah. You certainly need two hands to clap. And
Yeah.
I want to ask you, what is the conflict resolution skill that you think every person should know?
Hmm. I'm thinking because there's so one of them is the ability to definitely pause in the middle of the conflict and recognize where this conversation is not going anywhere.
Mm.
That's one of them. Why? Because if we engage in the conflict, we're not listening to each other anymore. We're just trying to prove our point. And something that I describe to my clients in therapy, when it comes to like why taking the time out is important, why emotional regulation is important, and just simple terms. So right here, we have what we call it's our thinking brain, right? It's the prefrontal cortex part of our brain, which is in charge of reasoning, problem solving. Just like right now, we're thinking, we're talking, we're engaging. So we're thinking, this is what we're using, right? In the back right here is the limbic side of the brain, which what I call emotional brain. So thinking brain, emotional brain. One of them is on and the other one is off. The thinking brain tends to be on because that's kind of what we use mostly during the day. Most of the time, that's kind of the one that we use, right? Whether we're at work, we're at school, we're just thinking. And then our emotional brain gets activated when we're experiencing an emotion. Let's say the emotion of anger, since we're talking about conflict resolution. So this is what we call a I'm sorry, physiological effect. So meaning emotional brain turns on when we're angry, thinking brain shuts off. There is a switch. So when the emotional brain is on and the thinking brain is offline, from here we say things that very hurtful to other people because we're angry. We're not thinking. We can't think because the thinking brain is off. So there's this switch. Does that make sense? It says that emotional brain hijacks the brain, in other words. So when we're right here, we're hurting each other, we're screaming, people are hitting each other, we're throwing things around because the emotional brain took over. So with the grounding exercises, the whole purpose of the grounding exercises or the timeout or the breathing exercises are to help our brain. It's kind of what we call the fight or flight response. It's to help our brain get out of the emotional brain, calm down so the thinking brain can go back online. Now, the thinking brain goes back online when our body is calm, it's regulated. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if we're able to identify, okay, we're having a conversation and now we're escalating, I need to learn what are my cues when I'm getting angry or am I getting frustrated or you're not listening to me and I'm feeling it in my body. And a lot of the times we do have those symptoms in our body, it's just that sometimes we don't pay attention. Like my heart is racing, my face gets hot. Or for some people, they're like, I feel like something in my ears. So it's really learning more about how does my body respond to anger? Like, because all of us were different, right? So really, really looking for those, cues as far as like when I'm getting angry, how am I feeling in order to say, you know what, we're gonna take a break because this is getting escalating, things are escalating and we'll come back to this later. That
Yeah.
right there, it takes a lot.
Yeah, I like how you said that because one of the things I was taught that really helped me was from Russell Brand, where he said that you usually feel it in the jaw, and I
Mm,
could really feel it in the jaw. And now, ever since that was explained to me, I realized, wow, like if my jaw is kind of tense, I need to relax it. That makes me feel a little bit
mm,
more calm. I loved how you said cues, because one
mm,
of the things that I was going to say is, I think a conflict resolution skill that people should know is have the ability of foresight, where you can predict a little bit of the future. Like if I say this or if I do this, is this going to go downhill or will we still be kind of calm and okay? And I think to
mm,
be able to gauge that, where what your next choice might do to the future, I think is a very important skill for people to
mm.
have.
And that's I think I agree with you to a certain extent. And the reason being is because if you try to predict and your brain is already telling you that it might go that way, which I see, like if you already know the person, most likely you know how they're going to respond based on past experiences, right?
Yeah,
But my
patterns.
question to you is if you will still be able to address that regardless how the other person is going to respond. If you feel I need to bring this up, but most likely she might say this or he might say that. So you know what? Let me take a step back because now I'm protecting myself, going into avoidance and not really addressing what I need to address. Where my responsibility is to address it in a respectful way. Obviously, being assertive, not being too passive, not being too aggressive. Um, but I'm still bringing up what I need to bring up, regardless of their responses.
Yeah, I think the way I see that is more of a personal thing. Like it considers the other person's patterns, but it's more
Uh-huh.
of a
Yes.
personal thing. Like if I do this, what will the future me look like? Will I be taking this downhill or will I still be okay? That's how I look at it.
Oh, so it's more like for yourself, not so much about how the other person is going to
Yeah.
respond.
It's considerate of the other person and their patterns and what they might do, what they probably would do. But I think it's more about the self because there's another great thing, another stoic idea where it's like, this doesn't have to be something. You don't have to make this something. You can just choose to let it be nothing. So that's how I
Mm,
navigate it a little. But
mm.
going back to Russell Brand, other than the tight jaw, he also introduced me to this one acronym where it's called HALT. And H is, are you hungry? Are you angry?
Oh
Are you
yeah.
lonely or are you tired? And then
Mm,
you halt, you stop, and then you pause and you reflect. And based on those, because it's usually one of those culprits, you
yes.
assess the situation.
Mm. Yeah, there is that. That's another thing. Yeah, I've heard that one. The other one, honestly, is just called stop. Which I know is gonna sound funny, but literally, like if you Google it, you're gonna see like you just stop, like stop it. Which sounds silly, but it is one of those things that you're like, okay, stop it. Like, I'm just gonna drop it. But I mean, once again, it kind of goes back onto coming together to an agreement of when things are getting escalated, what are we gonna do? I know I'm bringing, I know I'm addressing more in a couple context, but I mean that could also apply for friendships. Um, and because what happened was what happens is that sometimes you might say, "Hey, I'm gonna take a timeout," and then the other person are like, "Wait, what? What do you mean? Like we need to address this." Oh, I'm sorry. We need to address this. So the importance of making sure that you're having these conversations. Like this is what we're gonna do when things start getting escalating, so that way we're protecting the relationship or not. So that's another piece to that too.
In your experience, what do you think most commonly men misunderstand about women and women misunderstand about men?
For women, I think sometimes we expect for men to read our minds. Like he should know that. Like, we live in the same house. So, I was thinking in couples, like, and then it's like, well, have you let him know? No, but he should know better. And it's funny because I've caught myself doing that sometimes with my husband. Like he should know that. And then he's like, how would I know? And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. Like I didn't say that to you. Like I haven't expressed that. So I can see. I can see that. On the others, for men, I think sometimes they they might be like, well, I'm buying her gift and I'm taking her out on dates and we're traveling, kind of more like checking the boxes, and like she should be happy. And it's like more like, well, women, we need like the emotional closeness. We need the hugs, the kiss, just kind of, kisses, spending time with each other. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. At the end, at the end of the day, we want to feel loved, and men want to feel respected.
Mm.
And that is hard because sometimes men assume that I'm gonna make her, feel happy if I buy these things or I took her, to these places. And so that I think it's the importance of really communicating with each other as far as like, hey, what makes you feel loved? What would be some of those things that I can do that are gonna make you feel loved? And vice versa. What are some of the things that maybe I'm doing as a wife that I'm that somehow you're feeling like I'm not respecting you? Really having those deeper conversations to really be more vulnerable with each other. I think that's something that I see that we miss because we're busy, right? We're working, we're going to school. We, when in the context of, marriages where there are kids involved, in activities. So it really is, it comes down to like the friendship. How do we know each other? Do we know each other well? Because we all change. Maybe this year I'm more into, I don't know, maybe I'm more into traveling the past few years because now I'm learning more about myself and I really enjoy traveling. So I want to be able to do that more. I'm not the same person that I was 5 years ago, and I won't be the same person in the next 5 years either.
Yeah.
So really kind of what I say, like updating each other when it comes to like in the context of relationships, just to make sure that I know who I am married to or I know who I'm in a relationship with. Um, so yes, I don't know if you feel like I'm just talking and kind of with diving into something else.
No, no, it was great. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm realizing that more in the past year that you really do change and update who you were just even a couple years ago. You might not have those interests at all. You might not care about those things at all. And so it only highlights even more live in the moment. As cliche as it is, it's true. Live in the
Mm,
moment because you can't keep holding on to the past and the future is yet to
mm.
be. So thanks for sharing that.
Yes, absolutely. There's so many things. And you're right. Like, sometimes we might kind of like look back, oh, I wish I would have done that 5 years ago, and I didn't because
Yeah.
your mind is something else, you're somewhere else. So yes, it is living in the
Yeah.
moment. I think it is important and really taking on the opportunities that you get. Because in the next 5 years, you might be in a different season of your, season of your life, and it's just different. And then you might not go back.
Yeah. True. One of the things I admire about you, and I really have not noticed it with other people, but I specifically have noticed it with you, you don't have the tells. When people are, let's say, nervous or something, maybe they'll like rub their fingers a little, or like their palm, or maybe their foot will shake a little. You don't have any of those. How is that the case? Has that always been you? Or is that something you developed over the years?
I don't know. That's a hard question for me to answer. I don't think I've ever had any tics or anything. I think I just feel it here in my chest. I just kind of might feel it just a little bit like the pressure. Um, but I don't think I physically show it. I think it's more internal.
Yeah. It's something I
Yes.
noticed and I was like, wow, because I even noticed it in myself. I went to a workshop and
Okay.
people told me about it. Like, oh, like that's just regular human behavior when they're a little nervous or like in a, unfamiliar situation.
Right.
That's how they are. And I started seeing it in people around me. But I just have never seen it. And I was like
Mm.
always surprised by that. Like, huh, she just doesn't have it.
Yeah, I think it's more like internal. I feel like I feel it more here. in my chest. Like last year, I was invited to a conference, and I was one of the speakers, and I was like, oh no, like I was like that is gonna be over 1,000 people looking at me, and so that was hard. I really felt like my heart was racing right before I walked in. And for me, about that conference, I just kind of prayed. For me, it was just kind of praying. It just kind of ground me and kind of calm me down. And then I just kind of walked in and I sat down and I felt it here. They're still like lingering here. But I was like way more calm. So that way, because what happened is that if I just, start focusing more on my chest, then now my emotional brain is here and I'm
Mhm.
not thinking. And if I'm not thinking, then I cannot speak what I need to speak about. So that's another piece where it's like the grounding exercise is coming. Because if I'm like, I feel it right here, like I can't, now I cannot think because the switch, right? So I really need to, be more intentional about like even grounding myself or even speaking slowly, which, me as a Latina, we speak so fast. In Spanish and English, I'm like, "Ooh." So then me being intentional and just like slowing down as I'm talking, like right now I'm talking, usually I don't talk this slow. I tend to speak faster. That also helps me because then I'm able to kind of regulate my breathing and does that make sense? Maybe that's
Mhm.
that's probably why it's helpful to me. I don't know.
Speaking of Spanish, I've learned quite a bit from you with the time that I spent with you, but my favorite lesson from you was un clavo saca otro clavo. And the reason that, which means in English, one nail drives out another nail. And it's in the context of a person might meet your needs, but the way that they are as a person, their character might not be good for you. And I loved that because at that time I had a friend, great friend, nothing bad to say about him. But I realized, like, hey, this is someone that I can meet up with and hang out with. But as a person, we're just so different. They fulfill that need of friendship, of, meeting up with someone, spending time with someone. But as people, we're just so different. Our characters are so different. And there's a dissonance there. So that was my favorite lesson that I've learned from you.
Yes, and I think now I'm trying to remember what session, but I think it was in the context of relationships, right? Like when
Yeah.
we go through a breakup and then all of a sudden, we want to find somebody else to kind of replace that. Um, and that is a very, very popular saying in Spanish, like for us, like, Latinos, it's very popular. It's like, oh, just kind of find somebody else, like un clavo saca otro clavo, like, then another nail will make you forget about the other one, so to speak. But obviously, that's not the case at all. I won't recommend it. Yes, the importance of just kind of going through the grieving process of the relationship, what worked, what didn't work, um, what it was supposed to be and it wasn't. So that requires time just for healing. And it's different like in context of relationship, whether it's like a marriage, going through divorce or so there is very, very complex. So definitely making sure that you are taking the time just to heal, time to just get to know yourself more during that process. What worked, what didn't work. What are some of the regrets? What did I do in the relationship that I should have done? Because somehow it could have just, I could have maybe neglected myself in the process just to keep the relationship going. So when it comes to that therapy, we really dive deeper into like what went right in the relationship and what were some of the things that you were, that you loved about this relationship and what were some of the unhealthy patterns that you noticed, but you still kept pressing on, even though you knew it was unhealthy for you, or you were neglecting yourself in the process. Because what happened is that there's a saying that says, if there's a saying that says, you repeat what you don't repair. And if you're not able to zoom out and observe yourself and observe the interaction and the patterns in the relationship, most likely you're going to get in a relationship that is similar to the previous relationship. And you're going to repeat the same cycle, same patterns with another body. probably gonna get with the same person in another body, same
Yeah.
characters, same. So that's why it's like taking the time to really heal and grieve the relationship and go through all of the emotional roller coaster, the emotional brain, but then also the thinking brain about what happened here. What were some of the things that I did or that I didn't do enough in the relationship or the other person too. Accountability. Um, and yeah.
There's this lovely quote from this show called BoJack Horseman, and in the show, one of BoJack's girlfriends in one of the seasons, Wanda, she breaks up with him, and what she says at the end is, "When you're wearing rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags." And I love that because it's so true.
Mm.
So,
What are your thoughts about that?
um,
How are you seeing it?
what you said, what you don't repair, you repeat. And I think I've seen that in my own life in different aspects. So,
Mm.
um, in relation to that quote, I find it so beautiful because it's like if you've convinced yourself of something, you're just never going to see the blind spots. You're just never going to see the flaws. So I guess that's what I take out of it.
Yeah, and that's why sometimes we might just blame the other person. Oh, well, this person didn't do this to me, or they should have done that, shouldn't be there for me. And that's why, for me, obviously, this is what I do for a living as a therapist. It's like, okay, well, what about you? How do you contribute to that as well?
Yeah.
Consciously or unconsciously? Because that's hard when someone calls you out on like, okay, well, what about you? We're talking about the other person, this and of course, there's perspective. It's 100% valid.
One thing I want to say is the trouble is when you can see your flaws, but the other person can't see theirs. When you try to balance things and they just can't, say, oh my God, why am I pointing out what's wrong with me if you can't even see what's wrong with you?
Yeah, and that's where I called emotional immaturity.
Yes, yes,
Cannot identify some of your own flaws, and that is hard, and that is so hard in a context of relationships because then you might get caught up in a relationship with the other person doesn't have the self-awareness. And I think self-awareness is an exercise. It's kind of like the month, like we go to the gym and want to have big muscles. We're not gonna have big muscles because we're wishing it. We need to go at it, right? We need to do protein shakes. We need to go and work out and do some weightlifting. We exercise the muscle in order for it to grow. I think same context when it comes to like the emotional awareness. Okay, how am I feeling right now? What's happening with me? What are some of my triggers? What bothers me? What are my boundaries? What I can say yes and what I can say no to. What are the red flags, green flags for somebody else, but also for me? What are some of the things that I know I need to work on my self-awareness? Um, do I overly express, but maybe the way I'm expressing it, I'm maybe too passive, too aggressive. Maybe I'm shutting down, or maybe I tend to be more of the avoidance side where I tend to be very anxious. So those are because we're not perfect. We're very imperfect human beings. So when you are in a relationship with someone that cannot, um, you know, pinpoint their flaws, run.
yeah.
But they're not gonna be able to meet you there when they cannot even do that for themselves. How am I going to expect them understanding me and having empathy for me and validating how I feel if they might not know how to do that for themselves? That is a huge red flag.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
So
Yeah. No, that was great. Thank you for sharing that. I was gonna say, Angie, this has been wonderful. I really enjoyed this conversation. Do you have any closing thoughts? Anything you felt like you wanted to say but you didn't get a chance to? Or something on your mind that you wanted to express?
get to know yourself. Not just you, like, everyone who's watching. Learn more about who you are. Learn more about where you come from, family dynamics. Are you repeating the same patterns? What are some of the good things that you want to keep repeating because they were healthy and you really appreciated those? Where some of those things that you're like, I don't want to carry that on to the next generation if you consider having kids, or just things that you don't want to carry on for yourself that you're noticing, oh, I'm repeating these just as my dad or just as my mom. Um, that is the importance of just learning about who we are in the past, like family dynamics, previous generations, even I did EMDR consultation last week with my one of the consultants, and we were talking about intergenerational trauma, and that was huge. I mean, I knew about it, but I really haven't done much research or read about it. But it's like, who are your great grandparents? Where they come from? What kind of childhood do they had? What's the difference? Are we repeating some of the other stuff, or how do I want to change? How do I want to evolve and grow in certain areas of my life? I think that's the best gift that we can give ourselves.
Changing the
Learning about
bloodline.
bloodline, absolutely. And once again, it's like not repeating certain things. There's this book that I recommend. Obviously, it applies to different people. It's called Adult Children of Emotional Immature Parents.
Yeah.
And it's about trauma and the concepts like of our parents, and how unconsciously we might be repeating the same, being emotionally immature. And I really love that because it gives tips as far as like how to navigate with parents that are still emotionally immature, how to meet them there, how to still have a relationship if we choose to, and how to be mindful and aware to not repeat the same patterns to the next generation. So it's not about blaming nobody. It's really understanding. And I think that's different. A lot of people are like, well, stop blaming your parents.
Oh,
But
I love that.
it's
Replace blame with understanding. I love that.
more like understanding and then
Yeah.
coming with it, which is different. And it's
Awesome.
hard. Sounds so easy, but it's hard.
Well, thank you for sharing that. We have less than a minute here, but again, I enjoyed this. I was just gonna say, I was gonna say you look like Zoe Saldana. Has anybody ever told you that before?
Like who?
Zoe Saldana?